All right, let's dive into something pretty wild. We're going to explore a hypothesis that tries to connect the super strange world of quantum physics with our deepest emotions, and maybe even the reality we experience every single day. It's called the entropy of choice.
So let's just start with the big, provocative question this whole idea is built on. What if all the chaos in the world, war, crisis, even your own personal misfortunes, what if they aren't just random, not just bad luck? What if they are a direct result of a fundamental law of the universe at play? It's a huge claim, I know. So let's unpack it.
First up, we have to tackle what the source calls the chaos question. See, to really get the solution this hypothesis is offering, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve, and that's the constant tug-of-war between order and chaos in our lives.
Okay, so here's the core of it. Your reality? It's not this solid, fixed thing you just exist in. Nope. According to this theory, it's being actively shaped every single second by energy. And that energy has a favorite rule to follow, the second law of thermodynamics. Now, put simply, that law says things naturally go from order to disorder, from a neat room to a messy one, from a structured society to a chaotic one. And that tendency towards chaos, that's called entropy.
So how do we influence any of this? Well, we have to borrow a concept from the quantum world called superposition. And this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine your life, right this second, isn't just one single path forward. Instead, it's this shimmering, vibrating field of billions of possible futures, all existing at the exact same time. This field of pure possibility is your initial potential.
So if we're living in this fog of infinite possibilities, how does anything concrete ever actually happen? Well, that leads us right to the power of your quantum choice.
This is where you come in. According to this hypothesis, every single conscious choice you make is an act of observation. And just like in quantum physics experiments where observing a particle locks it into place, your choice forces that massive field of probabilities to collapse. It goes from billions of maybes down to one single is. You're not just picking an option. You are literally pulling one single reality out of the quantum fog and making it real. But what kind of reality do you create? Well, that's where entropy comes back in, but this time applied to our emotions. Remember, entropy is a measure of disorder, of chaos. The theory goes that choices driven by fear, anger, jealousy, those are high entropy choices. They literally pump chaos into your reality. The source even calls them energetically inefficient. It's a messy, wasteful way to create.
And this slide really breaks down the two paths you can take. On one side, you've got the high entropy choice. It comes from fear and anger, and it's driven by the amygdala, our primal reactive brain. The effect? It supposedly distorts space itself. But on the other side, you have the low entropy choice. This one comes from a place of creativity, and it's handled by the prefrontal cortex, your more evolved, thoughtful brain. And its effect is the opposite. It aligns space, creating order and coherence.
So what decides which path you take? It's not random. The source says it's determined by your internal moral and ethical algorithm. That's just a fancy way of saying your core values, your principles, your conscience. This inner algorithm is the filter that decides whether you collapse reality into a messy, chaotic state or a clean, orderly, and creative one.
Okay, so that's the power of one person's choice. But what happens when you get millions or even billions of these choices interacting with each other? That brings us to what this theory calls the collective reality engine.
You know, how does something as massive and destructive as a war even begin? Well, according to this hypothesis, it starts with one. Just one. One single, destructive, high-entropy choice, usually made by someone in a position of power.
But that one chaotic choice, it doesn't stay small for long. It gets amplified, it's magnified, using powerful tools like fear-based messaging and propaganda, which are basically designed to tap directly into those high-entropy emotions we just talked about. And the result of that amplification is huge. It actually synchronizes the emotional state of millions of people. It's like it gets them all vibrating at the same frequency of fear and anger. They essentially become a massive collective generator of chaos, a huge engine pumping out high entropy.
And when that collective energy, that collective distortion, hits a critical point, it becomes so powerful that it forces the entire field of possibilities for a nation, or even the world, to collapse into the most chaotic, high-entropy outcome available. And often, that outcome is war.
Wow, okay, so that's a pretty grim picture of how chaos can spiral out of control. But the hypothesis doesn't just leave us there. If collective chaos is possible, what about collective order? Can one person's choice really make a difference? That's what this next part is all about, finding a signal in the noise.
So even when you're swimming in a sea of collective fear and anger, the theory says you can make a different choice. You can become what it calls a point of coherence. You can be a source of stability, a pocket of order.
And this isn't just some nice philosophical idea. It's presented as a literal physical action. When you make a conscious, creative, low-entropy choice, you are physically pushing back against the chaos around you. You are creating a real, measurable effect, your very own oasis of order in your immediate reality.
Now, all of this sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? How do you put it into practice when things get tough? Well, this final section offers a practical framework. It's time to open up the Creator's Toolkit.
Now, the source material is really clear about this. This isn't about being a mystic or just wishful thinking. It's about becoming an integral practitioner. That means you are someone who actively uses everything you've got, your experiences, your emotions, and your intellect, the gut, the heart, and the brain, to quite literally manage and shape your reality.
And the source gives us a really simple three-step process. First, you pause. This is so important. You have to break the cycle, interrupt that feedback loop of chaos happening around you and inside you. Second, analysis. This is where you bring in your higher-level brain, the prefrontal cortex, to consciously choose the creative, low-entropy path instead of just reacting out of fear. And finally, number 3, action, because a choice is just a thought until you do something about it. This is the step that actually makes that order real in the world.
And this quote really brings it all home. It's a direct call to action. The whole idea is that by acting consciously, with intention, you can fight back against the natural pull of chaos. You can, in the source's own words, level the playing field.
Which brings us right back to where we started, with a fundamental choice, a question that this whole hypothesis is really asking you. In this ongoing creation of our reality, which force is ultimately going to win out? Your will or the laws of chaos?